Leadership is the art of giving people a platform for spreading ideas that work. Welcome to DC Local Leaders, the podcast where we talk to C-suite leaders within the DC area. Our guests share their pathways to success and the important moments that impacted their careers. Lean in as we get the inside scoop on how they are shaping their industries, how they lead, manage, and connect with others. From the sectors of aerospace, defense, tech, IT, and more, this is Local Leaders. Your host has been making meaningful connections with industry leaders for over 15 years. Here's Philip Nathram.
Welcome back to the DC Local Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Philip Nathram, and today we're going to be talking with Tim Spadafore of CGI Federal. Tim played hockey in college. At no point did he think that he would have a career in defense or government contracting or running a business on his own. He took a COBOL class just to get through college, and that led him on a path of being able to learn from his experiences, take some chances, and found himself at the leadership of a smaller company that was later merged with CGI Federal. He talks about becoming a parent and how that's helped him to learn how to ask better questions based on the way that his daughter asked questions, and spending time with the Sprout Therapeutic Center with her, taking writing lessons. We just have a great conversation about entrepreneurship, what it means to start a company, some of the things to look out for, and how to lean into your mentorship and really ask for the help because it's out there. People do want to help, and he's one of those people. He gives back to his college, Rensselaer. He gives back to people locally here by mentoring others, and it's just a great conversation, and I hope that everyone enjoys it and can learn a lot from him. Again, DC Local Leaders has partnered with NVTC, that's Northern Virginia Technology Council, to bring Let's Talk Tech with NVTC. It's a digital series. It's all video. We interview technology companies in the area and get a better understanding of what they do and how they do it. You can find more information about that on our YouTube page, our Instagram page, or on nvtc.org. And thank you to everyone who's been liking and subscribing on Spotify, Apple, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We really appreciate it. You can also find our episodes on Notecast. Founded by former Special Forces members, Notecast is a veteran-owned company. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a podcast listening app that allows you to take notes directly from the app. Simply tap the bar on the screen that says transcribe, and it will transcribe your note, both audio and in text format, that you can send it to yourself and never have to write anything down. If you're riding in the car, if you're doing something around the house and preoccupied with your hands, no need to worry. You don't have to stop what you're doing. You can simply tap the screen with your knuckle, with your finger, whatever you have in hand, and Notecast has got you covered. Check out Notecast, and let's get into the episode. Appreciate you doing this, Tim. We're back with another episode here of DC Local Leaders. Today we're in the office of CGI Federal, right?
That's correct, yep.
Tim Spadafore. And Tim, I really hope that, I think a lot of people are going to learn a lot from you. I know that you've got, a lot of experience in technology and stuff, but we had a chance to talk before. Are you still playing hockey?
I'm not playing hockey anymore.
No?
Okay. I got hurt pretty bad, so I hung
Recently?
it up. No, it was when I was in my 30s.
Oh, you know what? I was kind of hoping you'd have like some cool story. Like last week, we were just in the middle of a game.
No.
Right? You're a person that's built a company and then later sold it. And I'm sure you've learned a lot of lessons along the way. I hope that someone out there who is maybe technical in their experience, or they're just an entrepreneur, can learn from you of how to do it and hopefully reach out to you and say,
Yeah, that'd be great.
So why don't we start, just CGI, for anyone who may not know CGI, what's the difference between CGI and CGI Federal, and why was that determination made? And
Sure. CGI Federal, we are a wholly owned subsidiary of CGI. And part of that reason is because of foreign influence. Because CGI Group is a Canadian-owned company, to work in the federal government, you have to be a U.S. company first. So we actually operate independently. We have our own CGI Federal board. I actually had a presentation for the board this morning just to introduce myself and talk about the defense practice and where we're going to go.
So, and you guys predominantly do defense work, or are you kind of the whole gamut of, like, what are you focused on most?
We cover the gamut. So basically, we're broken into 3 business units today. Stephanie Mango, recently announced as our new president, also runs our SAGE, which is one of our business units that includes defense practice, HHS, Health and Human Services, Department of Justice, and National Security, and then the judicial programs, Library of Congress, House of Representatives, that type of thing. Our RAP business unit is regulatory programs. That is Department of Interior, agriculture, agencies like that. And then our third business unit is international diplomacy, State Department, aid, patent trade, commerce fall in there.
How'd you get started in technology and things like this?
So I played hockey in school and couldn't, at Rensselaer Polytechnic, you had to pass a computer programming class to graduate. I didn't have the time to focus on the class that RPI offered, so they had a program with a local community college. So a number of us from the program took that class. It was a COBOL development class, if you remember what COBOL was. And it was one night a week, Wednesday night, we'd all slip out of practice early. We took the class pass-fail. We all barely passed, but it allowed us to graduate. And I had COBOL on my resume because I did learn it at school, and CGI was hiring. So that having COBOL on my resume for that pass-fail class is really what started my career down here.
So let's go back. You're playing hockey.
Yep.
Did you play for your school? You played for the team?
I was on the team. I was one of the backup goalies.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
pretty tall guy.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Helpful. You can reach out there and block the puck. And where is the school?
Rensselaer is outside of Troy, New York, so it's near Albany.
Did you play against like Canadian teams?
We were in the ECAC, so we basically played the Ivy League schools.
Okay.
Union College, Clarkson, St. Lawrence, and then the Ivy Leagues. That was our conference.
But what was your major? What did it have anything to do with?
I was engineering for about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then realized there was no way I was going to pass physics and chemistry and those, so I converted into management.
So your first job out of college
was American Management Systems, which was bought by CGI.
Okay, but that's just like a coincidental thing. At the time, it was like AMS.
Yep.
Did you accidentally end up being a career CGI guy somehow?
I'm back.
Yeah, you're back, right?
I'm back and I'm enjoying it. So
yeah,
it could be. It's looking that way.
Like, so you get into this field that maybe you didn't know that you wanted to be in, right? It sounds like because you weren't like a technical, I'm going to learn how to be the best coder in the world kind of guy. What was going on during that time? Like, why'd you stay in it?
I had some great mentors. One of the very first people I worked with worked for Lynn Bushy. She was my first project manager. She just announced her retirement at the end of this year. And then Lou Carr was my technical lead, and I remember I had to develop alcohol, tobacco, and firearms payroll interface. That was the very first thing I worked on.
You had to develop.
I had to develop. So learning from Lou, I was in the office every day at 7. He was very diligent about his hours. Sat side by side with him and learned the ins and outs of back then what was FFS, which is the Federal Financial System, which was AMS's IP at the time. And just took it from there and just kept progressing. I then went to the IRS to do the Y2k conversion. IRS was the only CGI customer that didn't take our out-of-the-box solution, which was the 2-digit solution. So we actually had to change every table, every document from 2 to 4 characters for the year.
Oh, so like instead of saying 1998, it said 98. Well, everyone else said 98.
Yes.
They were the only ones that
They
said
were the only ones that said, no, we have to go to four digits.
Do you think that helped them with the Y2K thing? Like,
no.
Yeah, because that didn't really even have anything to do with anything.
No.
Right. Yeah, because nothing happened. Like my phone still worked and the watch.
They took the approach that we're always going to be on this mainframe financial system, and we had built a solution that put it out, I think, into the late 20s, early 30s of 2000, and they were like, well, no, we're going to be on the mainframe forever, so we need the 4-digit solution.
Yeah.
But they were the only ones that did that.
Was there something going on with you and you was like, I think I kind of want to do this on my own? Because you later went on to be a COO of a different company and then later start your own company with Terra, I think, right?
Well, basically what happened was a number of AMS folks left to start a small business. I remember it was shortly after AMS brought in a new CEO. Basically, all this person did was sell companies. I put 2 and 2 together and said, I think AMS is going to get sold. So I went to work for a small business, Delta Solutions, and spent 6 great years there, 7 years there, and just rose from being, they brought me as a project manager to being the CEO's right hand, where I was senior vice president.
Do you think that was more likely because you were with a small company, not with a big company, or like?
It definitely provides you with more opportunity to carve your own path.
Yeah.
I would say, because we started as 30 employees. So as you're winning work and as you're adding more employees, you need to figure out dynamically what your organization structure is going to look like, who are your future leaders going to be. And I just worked my tail off to help us get successful in that. Just afforded me the opportunity to move into these more senior roles.
Did you think about that going in, or did you consult like your mentor going in to like, hey, should I go work for a big company or should I work for a small company?
It was more just taking a chance. My gut was telling me to go for it, and I figured if it didn't work out, I could always come back or always find another big company to work for.
How old were you?
About 27, 28.
Yeah. Were you married and stuff at the time, or so you're single? You had the opportunity to do that,
I had the opportunity. Right? It was right here local. Lived in Arlington at the time. Lived all around this area in Virginia, just trying different locations. That was one thing I did when I was younger.
What's your favorite one? What?
Old Town was my favorite.
Yeah.
It was. I enjoyed living in Old Town, being able to walk. We lived right near the metro, being able to walk downtown. It was close to the trail, so back then when I was rollerblading, I could easily get there. That's the one I enjoyed. We ended up, I settled in Arlington, lived in Arlington for a long time, enjoyed that. Obviously, as you get a little older, I'm further out now. I'm closer to Middleburg than I am to anything else.
Yeah.
So,
but what happened with Delta? Like, how'd you get from Delta to launching your own thing with Terra thing?
So basically, I had been at Delta for 7 or 8 years. One of the owners had left the company, one of the owners I was close with, and recognizing that I didn't own the business, I could give my recommendation and guidance, but it wasn't my decision. My wife and I were on our 2nd anniversary and just sitting there and talking through what we wanted to do. Did we want to stay? Did we want to go? We just said the heck with it. And I took a month off to figure out what I was going to do. And then I talked to another company called IBC. So I had the opportunity to join them. We won our first prime contract within 9 months or so and started to grow. And then from there, we continued to do well. We then ran Dominion Consulting for a number of years. Dan, Paul, and I started talking through everything. We approached our other partners, ended up merging Dominion with Terra in 2019.
When you said you met your wife at Delta, were you guys working together?
We did work together for a little bit.
Yeah.
Recognized we had to change that immediately.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's probably not going to work out. Like it was suggested to me that like proximity is how you actually meet people. We got into a conversation about dating and stuff like that.
No, I mean, the reality is you spend more of your time or as much of your time with your coworkers as you do your family.
Yeah.
If you travel, you're spending more time with your coworkers than your family. So I think it's just, it's important that you enjoy who you're working with. I think obviously respect is a key piece of it, but more importantly, I just want to have fun with the folks I work with and share some of those personal experiences that I think carry into your work environment.
Yeah. Like, what is that initial offer letter or just that blueprint of a business plan? Did you have something to look at or mentor someone to consult? Like, how do you even put that together?
I think from my standpoint, for me, I used the opportunity to learn from Dan and learn from JP because they had already started and sold the business. Mm-hmm. So when I was at Dominion as the chief operating officer there, we were really focused on sitting down saying, okay, where are our relationships? Where are not only in the government customers, but in the commercial side as well? Where are our relationships? How can we take advantage of our networks? And there's a lot of companies and a lot of people that want to help people get started. I think that's one of the things that I learned really quickly was, I could reach back into AMS at the time or reach back into colleagues at IBM or other small businesses, and they really do want to help you get off the ground and get a good start. You're not a threat when you're first starting. It's when you graduate small business or you get to a point that you're competitive with them, then things change a little bit.
Yeah. Was that mainly because you worked for that company, or do you think someone else who just is looking for the advice of how to get started, you think that advice is actually out there and a lot of people are more willing to help?
They are.
Yeah.
They are. I think, you want to take advantage of your network. You want to take advantage of companies or other entrepreneurs that have been successful.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that strikes me about this area is how many people from Virginia Tech have graduated, started their own businesses, and been really successful doing it. And they lean on that network to help each other out and be successful. And I think that's a big piece of it.
Yeah. I mean, look at Octo Consulting.
Yes.
And, I just interviewed the Virginia Tech's Innovation Campus enrollment folks, Robin Jones and Danette Gomez-Bean. And it's a big, like, technology, what they're trying to accomplish with that Innovation Campus is like the next 50 years of technology. So I talk to as many people as I possibly can. That's the only skill set I have, is talking to people.
That's not a bad thing.
Yeah. I mean, I talk to folks and I'm decent at math. When I talk to people that just, they work for another company, and sometimes they can express a little bit of entrepreneurship, right? But there's that fear of like, oh, there's so much competition. Even starting a podcast, I'll put it in the first person. There are so many podcasts out there, right? And there's so many naysayers. Well, there were so many people, great people, but their suggestion was, yeah, but there's so many podcasts. And there's so many options for people like Tim to want to speak to and be on their platforms. Why would they choose you? And that could sometimes be a barrier, and that fear and vulnerability of putting yourself out there could be a barrier. That's actually not the case. If you're able to just get yourself out there and start talking about what you want to create, there's people out there that will help you be successful.
There are, and I think entrepreneurship, it's really up to you to decide what it is. You know, some people, when people think of entrepreneurship, a lot of people instantly go to, oh, you started your own company, or you started your own franchise, or you started your own business. That's not always the case. I think one of the things that I really enjoy about the CGI culture is that every member is an owner, and we want every member to think about growing the business and building the business. And it's a responsibility we do put on everybody.
So everybody's a shareholder?
We do offer that to everybody. In my defense group, 85% of my members are shareholders, and that's something we're pretty proud of. And we do that through stock purchase plan, which I think is just invaluable. Yeah. When you see the stock increase and you see the stock go up, you feel like you've been part of that. But, you know, for those that are thinking of starting their own business or their own company, lean on your mentors inside. Lean on your mentors if you're part of a larger organization, because a lot of what you need to start your own business, you have the mechanics of it, and I have to do payroll, and I have to do HR, and I have to do marketing and business development, but those are all skills that you learn with the company that you're currently working for.
So is the fear of, if I say that, they're going to think I'm not a team player, or they're going to think I'm trying to leave? Maybe I'm not articulating that fear correctly.
No, that makes sense. I think, you know, obviously we want to retain all of our top talent. A reality of this marketplace, particularly here in DC, with how competitive it has gotten, we know that's not going to be possible. We just had a VP that has been at the company for 20 years, had an opportunity to go work with a small business and have some ownership in that, and CGI treated him great. Now him and I exchanged notes last week to talk about, all right, now that you're out, once you get settled, let's connect and see if there's ways we can work together.
Where did the idea come from the first time you thought about, I think we should kind of partner and go off on our own? Can you coach that?
You can. One of the things I explored and still think about is, what mentoring can I do for small business owners? You know, particularly where we learned a lot was around the M&A space. You know, as we doing a merger like we did the first time with Dominion, or the second time with Terra, where you're not exchanging cash and it's just, hey, let's just put our heads together. The mechanics are a little easier. But what we learned going through that is there's a lot of small businesses that have big aspirations, but they don't know how to get it to the next level. They don't know how to manage that growth effectively. Yeah. And we've talked to some of our M&A partners, investment bank partners, in terms of, you know, is there a market for those types of advisory services? Yeah. And we found there is. Some companies, you know, the smaller business in particular, if there's one owner or two owners, they put so much into their business, their blood, their sweat, their tears, that it's hard for them to see the forest between the trees and make some of those strategic growth decisions that need to be made when you hit a certain size.
Yeah, sometimes we get tunnel vision, or other suggestions could feel almost like an attack on what you've created, or saying that it's not enough or not good enough.
Right.
But that's a lot of awareness as a leader or as an owner of a company that you need to be able to have to receive that message.
And I think you need to make a decision early on, and what do you want your business to be? You know, with respect to some people, you know, when they start a business, they're like, I just want to run this business till I'm ready to retire, and then either hand it over to my employees or shut it down. Other people go in with the mindset that, hey, I want to sell my business. And you do have to treat both separately, because there's different ways to run the businesses, different investment decisions you need to make to run the businesses.
Have you found that you as an individual had to almost grow into a different person? When you're an entrepreneur, you kind of wear a lot of different hats, and you're not necessarily, even though your job title might be chief executive officer, you're not actually that chief executive officer of a decentralized command sort of team.
Right.
If you're continuing to grow, you're going to have to put those responsibility positions in place, right? And now you do become that. What's that growth feel like? And what do you do to even make that growth?
It's hard. I think the one thing that's really evolved for me over time is patience, my patience.
Yeah.
When I first started, when I first started managing people, even at AMS, I would get easily frustrated if they weren't figuring out, it wasn't clicking. And as you grow and as you progress, specifically as you start a small business and you are doing everything, you're doing the business development, you're doing the finance, you're doing the payroll. Fortunately, I had good business partners that we all could take some of the load off of each other, and we kept our responsibilities fairly siloed. But at some point, you need to be able to let go, and you need to be able to make hires and trust other people to do what you want them to do, or to do the job. And the biggest thing there in letting go is understanding there's more than one way to solve a problem, and being okay and comfortable that, you may solve a problem differently than me, and I hired you and I trust you, so I need to let you do. That was one piece of it. I think the other hard piece for me was the personal aspect of it. When you own a business, you take your wins and losses pretty hard. Yeah. When people leave, you take that pretty hard. And you get close and you build a connection with folks. And as you progress in your career, you don't have that same ability to do that. At Terra, think as an example, we had 200 employees, and I knew all of them and could connect with all of them. They could pop into my office if they were at the office to say hello. As you move, now I'm responsible for about 650, 700 members, and many of them are dispersed around the country. Trying to do video chats when I can, connect with people when I can, has been harder. But the thing is, I'm not as close to members as I like at Terra. Think I would know if a member was leaving, and why they were leaving, because I've talked to them about it. Here, I don't have the ability to have that same connection just because of the size.
Do you miss that?
I do.
Yeah,
I do. I'm really anxious to start traveling again.
You can go to the places.
So I can go to the sites and meet the folks I haven't been able to meet with. So that's something I'm looking forward to when we can.
Is that part of the culture that you like to build in your group?
I think it's important that you have that personal connection with people. I think it's important that you build a bond with people, because that lets you be a more effective leader and lets you understand what day-to-day challenges people are having. I think one of the hardest things right now that worries me a lot is members' emotional and mental state living in this world we're living. Yeah. I'm tired. My office is up in the bedroom right now. I'm in my bedroom 20 hours a day. Yeah. And there'll be days where my wife says, just get out of the house, even if you just go drive around, because we're so focused on work and our Zoom calls and our Teams meetings and getting through everything. Today, as an example, I had a parent-teacher conference at 8 on Zoom and meetings all the way through 5:30, 6 o'clock tonight, with no breaks. So I think that's the one thing that has been challenging. I like being able to just walk down the hallway, pop into someone's office, and just talk work or not. One thing I realized, so I did a silent retreat one time. The guy with the podcast stayed silent for 5 days. And I learned one of the first things I picked up, because I vibed with people there, and we're not talking, right? We communicate with so many different ways than just the noise we make with our mouth. And I think we're missing a lot of that in the virtual setting, right? Because I can't get your body language and and we get to be animated and a little bit more, but sometimes we just, in front of the screen, we just end up being a little bit more robotic. Yeah, and I think one of the things I actually think that's a positive out of COVID, even with wearing masks, I notice people are making eye contact a lot more. Oh, because they don't have it. You can't see their face. And so as a result, the only way to really communicate with someone and to show them how you're feeling is through your eye contact. Yeah. And that's something, even passing someone in the grocery store, talking to someone, ordering a meal, I think that's been a big change for the positive. It's all eyebrows. Yep. So how many kids do you have? One. How old? She is 7. You playing hockey too? No. You talked about patience, right? Did you find that the way that you interact with other people and
the patients you had changed by becoming a father and having a kid?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I think you have to take yourself much less seriously. We were actually looking to downsize. We lived near the East Falls Church Metro, and we were actually looking to downsize into a condo and move into D.C. And then I was driving to Toby Hanna Army Depot up near Scranton, Pennsylvania, and my wife came in crying, and I'm like, would the dog die? And she's like, no, I'm pregnant. And we weren't expecting to have children. So I then had to hop in the car immediately and go on like a 4.5-hour drive and just started thinking about everything. And sure enough, we had Henley, and it does change you. You know, we got lucky because when we had her, the Olympics were in Russia. So we could watch everything live in the middle of the night when we were up and she was crying and being fussy. So we didn't have, during the day, it was, all right, not going to worry about that. I mean, you do learn to interact with people differently because as she starts to get more curious and is talking to you and asking questions, you're like, well, that's an interesting way to ask that question. I think it changes how you're viewed in the world. Yeah. Like, I think about meetings now. I'll be on a Zoom meeting and it might be with a client or I might be presenting to a number of people. She'll pop in and give me a kiss on the cheek. See you later, Dad. And it's like, all right, people see that side of you. And I think that's been a positive.
And especially in a leadership role, do you think it's important to be a little bit more human that way, that like people see that, all right, he's also, he's a father, he's a husband, he's all these things, he's someone just like I am, and because you're not perfect either, right? And so like if they can see that you are vulnerable and make mistakes and learn from them, and do you think that makes them more willing to do that and bring those mistakes to the table?
I do. I think, I'm a fairly emotional person, so when I announced the merger with CGI as an example, I was on video. We got pretty emotional about it because it was effectively, I had started with Todd and George in 2009, and 11 years later, we had been through the first two mergers weren't the same because we weren't going anywhere. We were still all working together. This was much more of we're still going to work together, but it's under a very different construct. And, when folks hear that emotion in your voice and they feel that connection, you see I had a lot of folks turn video on so they could see my face.
Yeah.
And then I could see theirs. I think that was important.
What was the feeling? Was it excitement or was it loss or was it somewhere in the middle?
Somewhere in the middle, because I didn't know what my role was going to be. I didn't know what plan CGI had in mind for Terra or how we were going to be split out. I had a general idea, but it's really that excitement about what comes next.
What impression do you think you're making on your daughter by being in the position you're in and some of the conversations she overhears you having in the room upstairs?
I think she's starting to understand a little bit. At school, she's learning. At school they were learning about Canada.
Yeah.
And we had a meeting last week, and she's like, Daddy, why was your meeting so long? I'm like, well, we had what we call our global ops meeting, and it's people from all over the country and people in Canada, people in Europe. She's like, whoa, that's really cool. So she doesn't quite understand what I do, but she knows I have a lot of meetings. She knows I manage a number of people. And, as she grows and continues to ask questions, I think she'll see more and more. Like this morning, her big focus was she actually came in and woke me up, I think at 6 o'clock. She's like, Daddy, you need to get into work. I'm like, well, my meeting's not too late. She's like, no, you need to get into work so you don't miss parent-teacher conference.
Oh.
Because that was at 8 o'clock this morning.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's, as I see her learn and as I see her improving her reading now, it makes you proud and it makes you look at life a little differently.
Well, she doesn't play hockey, but does she play sports at all?
She's learning to ride. We do a lot of work.
Horses?
She is. We do a lot of sponsorship work with Sprout Therapeutic Center. It's a center out near us, and they use riding as a way to help people with disabilities, and they do community lessons there. So we've gotten to know Brooke and her team really well. And Henley does her riding there. She loves it.
Yeah, horses are incredibly perceptive.
They are.
Like in terms of like emotional, like understanding people, and I think that's like it's therapy, right? People that suffer from any number of the trauma of any different type. I
think the thing with riding too is it's teaching her to be responsible at a very young age, because they don't treat the 7-year-olds any different than they treat the 15-year-olds. She has to groom the horse when they're done. She has to help clean them and comb them. She's learning how to take care of them, and she has to walk them to the pastures. She has to clean up after them. And I think it's teaching her a responsibility that she probably wouldn't learn yet otherwise.
Yeah, you need to take care of this thing. Is it scary, like having her up on the horse? Like, is she afraid of like falling? Or
She's not. They start on ponies, so they're a little smaller. She's fallen off a couple times. They've turned one way or turned the other, and she's lost her balance. They give her a ribbon called Hitting the Dirt. It's actually a brown ribbon. So she has 3 or 4 of those. But more importantly, when she does fall off, she's anxious to get back up.
Yeah, I think that's probably great lessons for life, right? You're going to make mistakes, but you can keep going.
And she's just learning, so it's a lot of walking still, learning the basics of how to steer the horse and control the horse. But she enjoys it. So,
is it scary being a parent? The reason why I'm asking is because, all right, running a business, calculating risks, using your experience, making good decisions. This is your first, so you're just kind of going with it.
Yep. We have a lot of friends that we have a lot of friends that in our neighborhood in particular, a lot of children the same age or in that same age. So we lean on each other and help each other out.
Like, hey, is this normal? Like,
yes, a lot of that.
Do kids do this?
A lot of that.
She asked me this question. Is she like, should we?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing now is, I'm starting to see some of the boy crazy already. It's where she goes to school, it's only a handful of girls. It's more boys than girls. So she's kind of forced to interact, I think, which is a good thing with the boys. And she's really had to assert herself and show that, hey, you're not going to push me around. And I think that's been a bigger thing. Fortunately, she's tall like me. I think she's the tallest in her class. Yeah. So that gives her a little bit of an advantage too.
Do you think playing sports younger and being in a team environment had anything to do with sort of your natural ability to become a leader?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I think what sport is, particularly in college, what sports does, all the way growing up, you appreciate what your parents do for you to get you started. You recognize the hard work that they put in to help you, get you to practices, pay for you to play all these sports. Yeah. Growing up in upstate New York, during hockey season, we had 3 games on the weekend. We'd play 1 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. Sometimes we weren't getting home until 7 or 8 at night because we're going on a road trip or whatnot, and they have to get you up in the morning, get you to school. Those are all things that you start to appreciate. The other thing I think sports does is it starts to teach you some discipline around your schedule and managing your time and managing your tasks. I think that's a big thing, particularly in college when you're out on your own for the first time. I had the fortune in high school to teach at goalie camps growing up, so I was gone for summer, so I had to learn how to live on my own, even at like 16, 17.
And you were teaching other people at goalie camp? You were getting a lesson in how to be a mentor.
And then in college, you start to learn, okay, I have to manage my time, I have to manage my schedule, I need to get my homework done, even if I've got practice. So you start to learn about the responsibility of hitting your dates, meeting your targets, meeting your commitments. And that's something that I think is really critical, particularly in your early career, because that's how you show your leadership that, hey, I've got the potential. If you're missing your targets, you're missing your dates, you're missing your deadlines, your leader's not going to have as much confidence to put you in charge of the next thing.
Do you think you can coach it if you didn't play sports? What about the people that do have the aspiration and entrepreneurship?
I think
spirit?
You can coach it.
Yeah.
I think I enjoy mentoring. I still do a lot with Rensselaer. I'm part of our executive leadership, our Lally Leadership Council, and that's in former Rensselaer grads that have all been successful in their careers. We help the management school set priorities and really help the school get some more visibility. So that's a big focus. I actually have a call Monday afternoon to talk through what our summer priorities are going to be. How can we help enrollment? How can we help get the Rensselaer brand out there? Not dissimilar to how can I get the CGI brand out there in the defense space. I still am pretty involved with the hockey program. We actually have a Rensselaer student interned for CGI last summer. He's interning for CGI again this summer. Really helping them through I want to be a professional hockey player, but I also want to work and I want to get an education. So really mentoring them on how do you balance that, and at what point do you say to yourself, all right, my hockey career is over.
Right.
It's time to think about the real world, and just being able to provide that avenue and that network to the team, to folks thinking about what's next, is great. I think the one thing that universities still could do a better job of is preparing graduates for what working in the real world is like. At Terra Think, we had implemented an onboarding program where the first 2 days was really, okay, in a federal environment, here's how you have to dress. Here's what's appropriate, here's what's not. Here's how you talk to your customer. Here's how you're respectful. Here's what you can and can't say. And a lot of it is just around, how do I work in this type of environment? I don't know that universities prepare graduates for that.
Well, and even some of those skills that you learned playing hockey and being a part of a team that you're coaching like through the university, like where else could people learn those skills if they're not in like that program at that school, or let's say they're like late 20s, 30s, and they're just now like, I think I want to do this. Like, how do they get that skill set or learn that?
There are a lot of seminars and things like that are available. CGI, as an example, we have something called Academia, and it's a lot of online learning. We will pay for and put some of our rising senior consultants and directors into leadership training and that type of thing so they can learn the basics. But at the end of the day, you've got to practice it.
Yeah, okay.
You really do. You just have to, it's trial and error. Okay, my teacher said or my instructor said I should handle the situation this way. All right, Philip, I'm going to try this and see if it connects. One thing that's really struck me too is leadership personality training that's out there and things that are out there. As an example, I just had my leadership team. We did Leadership 360. Basically, you get 13 people to, 13 to 15 people to evaluate you. One's your direct manager, a number of your peers, a number of partners, and they just give you and it turns around a profile for your leadership style. So I know that, all right, Philip, based on your profile, you're more reactive than I am. Or I might be more creative, and I might be more of a promoter, and you might be more of an analytical person. So it helps in how, when we have conversations, knowing that really helps me know how to talk to you and how to connect with you.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's not meant to criticize, and it's
No.
not meant to shame or change anything about the person. It's just to help the other people understand that person better, to communicate with them differently.
Yep. What I found from my personal profile as an example was I'm way too hard on myself. And I can recognize that pattern from growing up, and the pressure and the responsibility my father put on me to be successful, and if it was never good enough. So I tend to be more critical of myself than others. And this was some good insight into that.
Is that what it was like growing up? Like he was like, well, what is, because like my parents, if I got an A-, I failed the class.
Yeah, my father wanted me to be successful. He had been in the military, was then in the reserves. He stayed in the reserves for 20 years or so, and just put a lot of pressure on me to be successful.
Yeah.
And I think that was...
what did he call successful, though? Like, what was he saying when he was saying...
For him, I think it was more about just having a good head on your shoulders and making smart decisions. Even up to the point where he passed a few years ago, I never told him how much housing costs down here. Because they wouldn't be able to make the connection. They wouldn't understand that, wait, you just spent how much money on a house?
Right, yeah.
I think he tried to ask me from time to time, but I never went there because they wouldn't. Right. It was like comparing apples to oranges.
How'd you learn how to navigate it? Was it just like, I just can't talk to him about this? Or
yeah, I would use generalities.
At what point did you feel comfortable enough to, it's still a parent.
Yeah.
At what point did you feel comfortable that it's like, all right, I need to start setting these boundaries?
I think moving down here helped.
Yeah.
The
distance.
The distance was a big piece of it. We'd talk once a week when I was younger, and as we got older, it would be almost daily, just to check in. My mom had passed a couple of years before that, so just to check in on him every day, see how he was doing. Then you start to control the conversation a little more than you did when you were younger.
Yeah.
And I think
how old were you when that happened, though?
Probably in my 30s.
Yeah.
I was probably in my 30s when I started communicating with them differently.
What was your mom like growing up?
She was great. You really get an appreciation for how far she was a stay-at-home mom, raising 3 boys. Mm-hmm. My dad worked a lot, just part of what he did. She really formed who I am today, particularly around my daughter. I think that's a big piece of it.
Yeah.
And that's probably the biggest takeaway there.
Was she like the opposite of being really hard on you and kind of balance that out?
She
or
did.
Was she supportive?
She was much more supportive, and she would get into it with my dad when she felt like he was being too hard on me.
Yeah.
for better or worse, I didn't make a lot of mistakes growing up in terms of poor life decisions.
Yeah.
So they just, because of that, they gave me a lot more responsibility than I think than others probably did.
You didn't really get in trouble.
No.
Are you the youngest, or where are you?
I was the oldest.
You're the oldest.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's because you're the oldest that you find that they were easier on your younger siblings than they were on you?
No.
Well,
yes. In terms of being successful, they were much harder on me. But I think what they saw was how hard they pushed me. I could handle that. My younger brothers didn't, and rebelled a little bit growing up and all the way up into their 30s.
Yeah. Do you think that any of that environment growing up had anything to do with the choices you made to not work for other people but start your own thing and continue to do that and rise? There's nothing wrong with just having a great job, making a great salary, and going off and living your life and using that to do all the things you really want to do. Like, I don't want to make it sound like you have to be an entrepreneur or you don't count. That's not what I mean. But you didn't take that approach. And do you think any of that had anything to do with that?
I do. I think how much trust they put in me, how much independence they gave me, particularly in high school, helped to contribute to that. When I was teaching teaching and counseling at the Goalie clinics in the summer, we traveled. So I would be in Detroit for 6 weeks. Then we'd go to Windsor. We'd end up in Toronto. So I was traveling over the whole summer. So I wasn't there with my friends to get in trouble. I wasn't just staying in our hometown. I was getting more world experiences. And even through college, I did the same thing. And, I spent less time at home, less time in the small town growing up to not get exposed to different things.
Yeah. What do you think all that traveling taught you?
I think generally learned a lot of different personalities.
Yeah.
I learned a lot of different communication styles. I learned a lot of different responsibilities, and that I think was the biggest thing. It helped me. It helped me communicate. Helped me be a little more outgoing. I still today don't like speaking in front of people. Yeah. I still don't. Like even doing the presentation this morning to the board, I was a little nervous going up there, and I'm like, wait, this is just everybody I work with. I have to remind myself that speaking in front of people is not a scary thing.
Are you tough on your daughter? The way you're?
I am. Yeah, I'm too tough on her.
You feel like you're?
Yeah,
your
I do. Like Martha and I'll speak to each other and be like, all right, we're being way too hard on her. She speaks her mind. She's 7. We're working on the honesty part. But I am too hard on her at times.
Yeah. Well, she's probably just trying to figure you guys out too, right? Like, how much can I get away with?
I think that's part of it. But I think she's learning that if she asks the right way, if she doesn't lie to us, we give her more rope, similar to what my parents did. And, she now can ride her bike to her friend's house, and that's not a big deal. We trust her to do that. And
because she's telling you the truth about where she's going.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's cool. I'm glad we were able to dig into like that childhood stuff, because that's just fascinating to me. And plus, I have my own experience. A lot of people that write about this, that the way we speak to children becomes their internal voice. And I can only speak because I don't have kids. I know my internal voice sounds a lot like someone I'm very familiar with, and it was like she was kind of mean to me a lot,
right?
And then I'm also very critical of myself, but in her voice, about the things that she was critical about me with. And so, like, if I make a mistake with a client, or I perceive that I've done something wrong, I'm going to go back to that. I pushed the button that was installed there, and right, it's like, whatever it happens to be my weight or something like that.
You're always who you are, no matter what position you're in. And what you have to do is adjust who you are for that position. And it takes more energy to do that for some people than others. Yeah. And particularly if you're in a role that you're not really well suited for. And I think that's the hardest thing as a leader to identify and to find is, okay, Philip, you start out the week great, but by midweek or the end of the week, you just look like you're beaten down, which tells me you're either pushing yourself in the wrong direction, or you're trying too hard to live into a role that you're not really set up or meant to be in, if that makes sense.
Do you think you can change the role that you can be in? Like, they can be coached up, right? I mean, or
you can be coached to a certain point, but I think at the end of the day, some people don't want to be a business unit leader, as an example. Some people don't want to be CEO.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there that I just want to feel like I'm learning something new every day. I feel like I'm contributing, and that's good enough for me, and that's okay. And I think it's important that you nurture that as well and let them know, hey, you don't want to be a director ever? That's great. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And I think as a leader, it's important to let them know you're okay with them just not being part of that natural, I need to constantly be moving up.
Yeah. I think that's probably the key, right? That you're open to, you allow the space for them to say, that's not what I want.
Right.
I'm good right where I am. And that doesn't mean that I'm complacent. It just means that I'm happy in doing what I'm doing.
If I try to force people into roles they don't want or are not comfortable with, I'm not setting them up for success.
Well, that's good stuff. I mean, I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, I did too.
This has been fun. And all right, before I let you go, what's one piece of advice that you can tell everyone that applies everywhere?
Don't feel like you have to time box it.
Oh, if it doesn't happen by this time,
correct.
It's not going to happen ever.
It took you 2 years to do this, but don't feel like you did it. And that's the most important thing. I think one thing that restricts people is, okay, after year 2, I have to be in this position. Then 18 months later, I need to be in this position. Let your career and let what you're learning, let your life experiences shape where and when things happen. You know, I couldn't have forecasted when I left AMS to go to Delta that I would then end up meeting Todd and George and joining IBC, or I had met Dan in the past, or knowing Paul. You know, those are all just things from life experiences over time. And that's how you make and chart your course, I think.
Well, thanks so much for sitting down with us, and look forward to hanging out with you more.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to DC Local Leaders. We'd love to connect with you. Find us on LinkedIn and YouTube by searching DC Local Leaders, on Instagram at DC Local Leaders, or our website, dclocalleaders.com. You can find the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Google, or wherever you find great podcasts. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe.